Welcome, everyone, to the National Infrastructure Bank Coalition's Zoom meeting and town hall for tonight, January 23rd, which is focusing, the theme being no to austerity, yes to the National Infrastructure Bank. We all know what has happened and what the circumstances are for the country, given the election results in November and where the country may or may not go in the future. We are of the opinion that the best and really the only economic policy that has any validity going forward is a national infrastructure bank and focusing on the development of our infrastructure. And tonight we're going to be focusing on exactly that. What we have accomplished thus far is legislation in Congress where we obtained before the end of the session in December, 48 co-sponsors. We have momentum going forward, and the reason why is no one else has a program and a policy that has any merit as far as economic development is concerned, and the Democratic Party does not have that, and that's what we're advocating for. So we got the 48 co-sponsors by the end of December. Next week, we are going to Washington, D.C. to start lobbying the DNC and advocating for the party to adopt this kind of policy. We're going to start the program now. I welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. We have speakers that are many of which are elected officials that we want to give the opportunity for to speak. And once they do so, then we'll rope in and loop in our other participants. So let us start with first our economic advisor extraordinaire, Alfeka Mutardi. And Alfeka, you're on.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone on this important Zoom call. We have a lot to discuss. I'm going to be brief and give you kind of like an overview picture because we have a lot of great speakers coming up. So our theme for this evening is no to austerity and yes to a national infrastructure bank. And you might ask the question, well, why do we need one of those? And just look at these pictures here: flooding everywhere, hurricanes everywhere, wildfires. We have a lot of broken infrastructure already, or old infrastructure, and we desperately need to repair it and make it resilient for any kind of catastrophes that might fall. However, we are facing a budget crisis, and the budget crisis is not anywhere more summarized than in the size of our national debt, which now stands at $36 trillion. That's more than a year's gross domestic input of production, and 80% of it is held outside of government, that is held by private savers. So you can see that when they're holding our debt, they don't have savings left over to invest in the real economy, and that's a big problem. And in addition to that, we're going to experience annual deficits, 1 to 2.5 trillion for the next 10 years. Nelson, could you mute your computer? Thanks. I appreciate it. For the next 10 years, we have an aging population, rising healthcare costs, interest payments, forever wars, excessive tax breaks we're spending. So all those things are making the deficits worse, which means we have zero chance of new infrastructure funding through our federal budget. And that's the main reason why we need an off-budget workaround to finance our infrastructure, which the National Infrastructure Bank will do. In addition to that, we have slowing economic growth. Not only is the growth uneven, but it is slowing down. You can see, compared to back in 1960, when we had growth rates averaging around 5.5% a year, it's come all the way down. The 10 years before COVID, it was 1.8. Then we have some stimulus bursts, which picked the economic growth up, but the Congressional Budget Office just came out with a new report, their January report, that says that GDP growth is expected to slow from 2.7% in 2024, down to 2.1% this year, and then down to further 1.8% for the next 10 years. That's a very slow growth rate. The principal reason for this overall slowdown in growth rate is because we have not been investing in our economy. We have not been keeping our infrastructure up to snuff. We're getting out competed by China, which has 3 development banks like this, and they have a huge investment in their public infrastructure. We're not keeping up, and our economy is falling behind. So, what is today's dilemma is that we have no economic plan that is proven to work. We started out with the Democrats' Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which was too small. This is my great comparison between what the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law will provide in new money compared to what's actually needed, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers. We need $2.6 trillion to fix 16 categories of infrastructure, and we need another $2.4 trillion to add on housing, affordable housing, high-speed rail, water projects to address drought in areas where we grow our nation's food. And the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is too small. It could not fit through the budget because senators didn't agree on how they were going to pay for a larger one. They didn't want to raise taxes. They didn't want to raise deficits, so they made it smaller and smaller. It has some other disadvantages too. Now, the longer we wait to fix our infrastructure, keep putting it off year to year, the problem is the unfunded costs grow. This year, 2024's report card from ASCE found that this funding gap has grown by another 30% over the last 4 years because we have not gotten busy and fixed our infrastructure and costs are accelerating. Add to that, we have lots of repair work to do. Look at those pictures on our opening slide. California needs $250 billion to repair the costs from the wildfires. North Carolina needs $50 billion in losses from its flooding. So we have breaking down infrastructure everywhere, in addition to all this base load of things that we need to fix that are not getting fixed. But the National Infrastructure Bank can provide the funding. And then we have the Trump plans for infrastructure. During his first term, he had Infrastructure Week quite often, but didn't have a plan to pay for it. In this second term, he proposes big spending cuts to the budget to accommodate tax cuts. Even Republicans warned that that might be too steep. And then he gave out executive orders when he got the first day of his administration on January 20th to pause spending from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. And Democrats warned that they'll try and, put objections onto that spending, which has already been passed by Congress. So what is the solution? The only solution is the NIB solution, which is off budget and big enough to fix everything, and also big enough to move the needle on the economy. It'll create millions of great paying jobs. It'll direct the investment so it doesn't get lost in budget fights. It's off budget, long term, requires no new federal taxes, spending, or debt. It'll reshore American manufacturing, double GDP growth from that 1.8% all the way up to 5%. Reduced inflation, which is a big problem today for many folks who can't make it, the working class who is really struggling to make ends meet, especially the cost of housing, because we're going to build a lot of that. So here's what our debt profile would look like with a national infrastructure bank. After World War II, we had very high debt as a percent of GDP. It came all the way down to around 30% in 30 years. How did that happen? We grew our way out of the debt. The same thing will happen today. Instead of having a trajectory that's going to go up by another 20 trillion or another 25 trillion, depending on policies, we can bring our debt down. How? Because we will grow our way out of the debt. And so that's the answer and the solution. Our bill had great momentum, as Jack mentioned, at the end of the 118th Congress, which ended in December. We had 48 co-sponsors. We added 10 of those co-sponsors on just since the DNC meeting in Chicago in August. We added 2 co-sponsors on the last day of the session while they were threatening a government shutdown. Everybody recognizes we cannot finance infrastructure through the budget. This is a great plan for doing it off budget. And oh, by the way, it'll have a huge benefit for every working American because it'll really improve their standard of living. So I'll stop there and see what our other folks have to say. And you can ask me any questions at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Alfecca. And I just want to add, in my opinion, there's no other policy that's being promoted within the Democratic or Republican parties concerning an economic policy that really has viability. That's why we have a unique opportunity at this moment that we need to capitalize and take advantage of. Our next presenter that I'm happy to introduce again, who's joined us several times in the past and is a true authority on public banking, Ellen Brown, attorney at law, founder of the Public Banking Institute in Los Angeles. Ellen, welcome again. We're so happy to have you.
Alfecca points out I won't go through all these numbers again. I mean, the numbers I got was we've got 160 billion from estimated losses from Hurricane Helene and 150 billion from the fires in Los Angeles added on to the last time that the ASCE reported. So huge losses. The middle picture there is 10 miles from my house that just started yesterday, a fire that just started yesterday, but the wind's blowing in the other direction. So we're not worried for the moment. We haven't gotten it. And as Helbeck also points out, we don't have the money. We hit the debt ceiling it was reinstated on January 1st, and we hit the debt ceiling on January 21st, the day after our inauguration day. So we're not going to get the money out of Congress, probably. Then there's the Department of Government Efficiency wants to cut $2 trillion in waste, fraud, and abuse, which is good if they can do it. But even if they do that, all they've done is eliminated the deficit, I mean, that's the amount of the deficit last year. So we'd just be back to our, the budget that we already have. So if you want to actually reduce the debt, you have to start cutting into real programs that are not fraud, waste, and abuse. And that means belt tightening or austerity. And we know historically that austerity doesn't work. It's had only a limited effect on reducing debt. It reduces spending, which has a negative multiplier effect because people and businesses have less money to spend, and the less they spend, the more the economy shrinks. So the way out is to grow our way out, as Alfecca also said. We have noteworthy examples from the U.S., starting with Hamilton's first U.S. bank. By the end of the Revolutionary War, the colonies turned states were $44 million in debt. Hamilton solved the problem with debt for equity swaps. State debt was accepted in partial payment for stock in the first U.S. bank, paying a 6% dividend. And that's what the National Infrastructure Bank would do as well. It's based on that model. And then that was leveraged into credit, issued as the first U.S. currency. So basically creating new money. Loans were based on the fractional reserve model. Hamilton wrote, "It is a well-established fact that banks in good credit can circulate a far greater sum than the actual quantum of their capital in gold and silver." And so the first U.S. bank and the second U.S. bank were basically national development banks. Their primary function, according to Hamilton, was to issue credit to the government and private interests for internal improvements and other economic development. And then Lincoln also did something similar, but the one closest to the situation we're in now was in the Great Depression under FDR. So the government repurposed the Reconstruction Finance Corporation as basically an infrastructure bank to fund development. It started with a modest capitalization of $500 million. It issued bonds, lent or invested over $50 billion over the next 25 years, funded the New Deal in World War II, rebuilt the depressed economy, and returned a net profit to the government. So $50 billion in new debt or new money, and it wasn't inflationary. Why? Because supply increased with demand, as Helvig also pointed out. Post-war prosperity gave us the greatest middle class, or a middle class that was the envy of the world. We didn't have this sort of equality problems that we have today. And then in China, we have our best model, our best modern model. It went from one of the poorest countries in the world to global economic powerhouse in 4 decades. Built 15 miles of high-speed rail, and built 26,000 miles of high-speed rail in 15 years, the world's largest dam and power station, etc. How'd they do it? The government owns 80% of Chinese banking assets, including 3 massive development banks. So the government banks would fund the projects with credit, just to issue the money as credit, and then the fees from what they built repaid the loans. Their money supply grew by more than 50 times in the last 28 years. It went from 5.84 billion yuan to 312 billion yuan. And yet it was not inflationary. Prices remained stable. Why? Because China's GDP went up at the same rate, like at the same exponential rate. We can do that as well. We can rebuild the country, restore our middle class, and create a 21st century renaissance by passing HR 4052, the National Infrastructure Bank. So I too can answer questions if you have any. That's all I got.
Great. Thank you so much, Ellen. We so appreciate your presentation, and we will circle back with you shortly. Our next presenter is a New Jersey Assemblywoman from Mount Laurel. We're very happy to welcome Assemblywoman Carol Murphy. Carol, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us tonight.
No, thank you. First, I want to commend all of you because this is an extremely important issue for us, not only in New Jersey, but also in the United States. You know, New Jersey does have an infrastructure bank already established. There are some loans and programs that we take care of, but you know what, on a national level. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about the bill that has to do with the national level that I've introduced along with Senator Johnson. So, and we're going to start pushing this because it is important that we bring this issue to the attention of our Congress. The resolution that I've introduced along with Senator Johnson urges Congress to establish National Infrastructure Bank. Why is this important for us? And many of you know this is because when a state does something, and now we're saying as a legislature, and you said it yourself, you have bipartisan support, which I have this on the bill as well, and you're going to hear about this tonight. Bipartisan support, not only national level, but for the state, you'll see, I believe you have another one of my colleagues coming on. And what we're going to show you is that once this gets passed, I will send it to all of the delegation in Congress and saying, hey, you know what, we passed this bill in the state because we think it's something we can get behind and support. When we talk about the national infrastructure bill, we need to start thinking ahead. And one of the most important things that we're dealing with, not only on a federal level, but on a state level, is our affordability, is making sure that our families are able to stay in the United States, is able to stay in New Jersey, is able to continue affording without it costing or breaking the bank for our states. And with this, like you've heard, and I'm sure you're going to hear over and over again about how this does not cost states money. Matter of fact, it probably even helps states be able to continue with the affordability, continue with supplying jobs. It creates the jobs that are needed. Our infrastructure, especially if we're looking for our future generation to be able to move forward in a world that is going to keep up with the times, we have to start bringing our infrastructure. Not only on the waterfront, because I sit as an MUA chair in my local town, but I can tell you our roads and our bridges and all of that is in need of repair and is in need of bringing up to the 21st century. And we need to start making sure that all of this infrastructure that we're talking about, not just about, like I said, it's not just about roads, it's not just about water, it's about everything, climate change. It's about bringing our jobs. It's about affordability that we need to now show that we want to stay in our state. And there are some things that can be done on a national level that would undoubtedly help the states continue with that affordability and continue improving our infrastructure. Our trains, when we talk about, you know, our river lines and our train tracks in New Jersey, particularly, down in South Jersey, when I look at South Jersey, we're limited on our train access. And therefore, we should be able to go to a place that would allow us to be able to, as a state or as whomever it is that's applying for a loan, to be able to have proper tracks and transportation down in South Jersey. Ultimately, if we're talking about trains, it alleviates congestion, right? And we're talking about, and those of you who are in New York, you know, we're just now learning about your congestion tax. And as we start seeing the overabundance of cars and trucks, we're going to start seeing more damage to our roads. So when we talk about this bill, we're talking about, we're getting our support from our colleagues to say, Congress, you should pass your bill. You should talk about how we need to make sure that not only New Jersey, but around this country, our roads and our infrastructure are brought up to speed. And we need to make sure that they know that this should be done through a national level. Consider everybody drives on the roads, whether you travel across country or if you travel a few states, whatever those cases may be, our roads and infrastructure need repair. The other thing I just want to touch base with you, like I said, it's about the jobs. It's about what we're saving. It's about making sure those folks have the ability to continue to stay here and be able to move around. But more importantly, your bill, it's a bipartisan bill. And why is that important, at least to me as a legislator? Because we need to get things done, not only in our state, but also in federal government. Right now, federal government isn't doing too much of what I consider to be advancing anything. And like you said, the bill, you got up to a certain point and then the bill stopped because session was let out. So now we have to make sure that we get this bill back on the radar. And I'm hoping, after I met with a few of your folks last week, and I'm hoping that we can start getting a few of the Congress on the bill as well, including the senators, in order to be able to pursue it in Congress, not only on the Democratic side, but also on the Republican side. And that bipartisan is so important, especially in DC, to get this moving, because things are not going to get done fast based on what we're seeing. And we need to get the buy-in of everybody showing how important this is. I am open for questions. I'll be here a little while longer, but my office, Mike is on here from my office as well, Mike Zupko. I think he'll be on for a little while longer, but I am always open for questions. I'll meet with you guys if you need to meet more and talk about this. I will keep you guys informed of when this bill is going to start moving forward in order to help. And once this bill passes both the Senate and the Assembly and goes to the Secretary of State for filing as a resolution, it will be sent to every single congressional member in the state of New Jersey, as well as the 2 senators, saying we need to get moving on this. And this is including on a bipartisan support. So I just wanted to end it there if you have any additional questions for me.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Murphy, and I appreciate all of your efforts, as we all do, with regard to promoting this policy that is going to save the country. And you, along with most of the other presenters tonight, are elected officials who understand what infrastructure means as far as communities and the economy is concerned. And if we're going to dig our way out of the situation that we face with increasing economic disparity within our communities, we need to advocate for a national infrastructure bank. And continuing on with our elected officials, I'm happy and pleased to introduce to you a representative from the Michigan House of Representatives from Ann Arbor, Representative Jason Morgan. Jason, welcome to our event tonight, and we're very anxious to hear you speak. You have the floor.
Thank you, Jack. And it's great to hear about the work that's happening in other states. It's really great to be with you all. As Jack mentioned, I'm Jason Morgan. I'm a proud state representative from Michigan here, serving the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And infrastructure is my top priority as a legislator. It was a little bit surprising to some of my colleagues in Lansing, coming from a pretty liberal place like Ann Arbor, and being a younger legislator. But I got there and I said, you know what my biggest priority is? Local road funding, because our roads are falling apart in our communities throughout Michigan. And I'm tired of paying a city tax and a county tax and state taxes and still having horrible roads. In my first couple months as a legislator, already being very passionate about infrastructure, ended up with a flat tire on the way back from legislative session. And I thought you could not write a more perfect script for making the case for road funding than this. And so I'll just say, talking about the National Infrastructure Bank and how it will help the country build new, innovative projects for the 21st century, along with really, I think as was highlighted, providing high-paying jobs and helping build up the middle class, which is, I don't know about any of you, but the number one thing I heard in the last several months of campaign season, I heard folks talking about rebuilding our infrastructure and taking care of our basics and really focusing on building out the middle class in our state here in Michigan, across the country. Um, for anyone who hasn't maybe traveled in Michigan, I know there were a lot of Ohio folks the last time I talked to some of you. And as soon as you cross that border, the roads start getting a little bit bumpier. And we're rather competitive here in Michigan, particularly with Ohio. So I take great offense to them having doing anything better than we're doing it. And I'm really dedicated to trying to help make sure that we're fixing some of those roads, but also investing in new technologies, investing in more rail connections throughout the country and throughout the Midwest, and really investing in our communities in ways that local governments and frankly state governments just don't always have the capacity to do on their own. So, so I just mentioned how tough some things are here, but we're spending record amounts on our aging infrastructure. We had a bonding program a few years ago. We've put a lot more money in with a record surplus last year's in the budget. We've put a lot of that money into infrastructure. But we're still falling short by $4 billion annually to upgrade and maintain our roads, dams, bridges, and drinking water. We've done all the proper studies. We know where we're falling short, and we still have a lot of work to do to make the investments. So a lot of the additional investments we've been able to make have been thanks to the federal stimulus and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So those have certainly been helpful here in Michigan. But as was said earlier, we needed, it feels awful to me as a public official to say thank you and we need more, but that is where we're at. We need more. We need more help. We were as a country so far behind in making big investments like this that we have a long way to go. I am a little worried about what's happening at the federal level in terms of rolling back the investments that have been made and the commitments to invest in our states that have been made with funding for the next 10 and 15 years. A lot of that I'm worried is going to be pulled back, which is going to have a devastating impact for Michigan. But we're not focused on that right now. We're focused on how do we make the case for this, which I think would be really helpful. But just to share a few stats from Michigan for your awareness, we had a report done in 2023 that found that Michigan is failing to attract residents partly because of our poorly maintained infrastructure, the lack of public transportation in our urban areas, the poor road quality, the deteriorating water infrastructure. We rank 47th in the nation in pavement quality. The bottom 10% for electricity reliability, and we face all of this while having the sixth highest gas tax in the country. So our people are feeling tapped out. They're already facing a cost of living crisis, and we're really running out of a runway to pay for some of our issues here, despite trying a lot of things that we've been thinking are doing our best. So that has been a big struggle here that we're facing in real time. I really do believe if we're going to build the future, have an economy that works for everybody, we need the help of the federal government. We need it in the form of a national infrastructure bank. This is the type of thing that can bring generational change, that can bring us into the 21st century, that can really, you know, invest in the type of projects that, who was it that was talking about China and the rail before me? I mean, she was, how do you pronounce her name? Elfeka?
Yes, Alfecca.
Elfeka, yes. Elfeka was beautifully outlining what is possible. I mean, I hear so many people in Michigan say, look at China and Europe and rail, and they say, wow, these are such cool things. Like, why can't we have these things? Well, because we don't have a federal government that is providing the backing and the support to do these really huge, amazing things that this country used to be known for.
Jason, if you could wrap it up, we have a couple more presenters if we could.
Yes, actually, yeah, I am actually wrapping up right now. And so the point of all that really was just to say, we've got to get this done. Certainly very supportive from here in Michigan. And thanks for the work that you all are doing.
Thank you, Representative Morgan, and your efforts, and we value your perceptions and opinions tonight. Next, we want to move on to Assemblyman Don Guardian from the New Jersey Assembly and representing Atlantic City. We welcome you here tonight, Don, and thank you for doing so. And it's your opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be back with you again. I do share many of the comments that have already been made. It's certainly an embarrassment as a highly developed country that we have not had an infrastructure bank since Franklin Roosevelt. Coming from New Jersey, where many of our roads were first built before we were a country, they're in pretty bad shape. Our state highway system is over 100 years old with our bridges crumbling literally, and in the interstate program that we've been so proud of is now 50 years old. Lead in our water is beyond our ability to be able to repair it by communities. Certainly, down here and along the shore, bulkheading is a major issue. These are all very large financial investments that are needed. And of course, I'm sure I share this with everyone in the country, the need for housing, both affordable housing and market rate housing that people can actually afford. So the infrastructure bank is the only way that I see going forward. We're incapable of finding the funding on a municipal level, mixed with county, mixed with state. We just don't have that kind of funding. And now we're learning the federal government doesn't either. And so we can all jump on the bandwagon to go to California the way the United States came to South Jersey during our last hurricane about 20 years ago. But we really should be fixing up the infrastructure that we have. This is the best way possible. As a Republican, I'm sure my fellow Republicans are all looking at how much it's going to cost. So just understanding the concept, we're taking part of the bonds that are already in place. We're paying 1% on them. None of this money is coming from taxes or new taxes and things, but it's going to provide the funding that we need to provide at least the first $5 trillion to really do the major infrastructure that we need. The last issue I didn't think anyone talked about, we certainly have it here. I don't think we're alone. And that is, where are we going to get our energy from? Not now, but 10, 20, 50 years from now. And so, where do we get that energy? We're already fighting now about that, but how is it affordable? And how do we get it? So you can give me all the electricity you want for free. We don't have the network to be able to deliver that electricity. And without that, we don't have new development. In Atlantic City, a common phrase is that the only time that we know times are good is when there are cranes in the sky, because that means there's new development going on. And without an infrastructure bank helping to provide that basic funding, we're not going to be able to provide the new construction of new businesses, new jobs, new housing that's going to be coming back to every elected official that's got to love, because it's going to be additional property taxes and additional sales taxes that are going to come back to help us continue to run the country. So I just want to urge everyone that I can talk to about how wonderful this solution is to the issues that we have before us that we're not able to take care of financially. And so I'm very happy to join everyone else. This is an issue we need to face. The infrastructure bank is actually the answer. I think as Assemblywoman Murphy had spoken, within the last half hour, we're going to have the structure in New Jersey from the Senate and Assembly that's bipartisan, that says, yes, we agree with this. We need to work on this together. This isn't a Democrat or Republican plan. This is a wise decision plan, and we can't fall together. The last thing I wanted to add was transportation. So, unfortunately in South Jersey during the Depression, they decided to actually sell the railways, the beds. So we have no way to get to New York. Literally, we have no way to get there because there's no, and we have one roadway that goes to Philadelphia. So if you get this concept, and I'm ending in the next minute, you can take a train and go to Philadelphia. When the train coming from Philadelphia is on the same track, someone has to pull over on the side and wait. That is actually the level of transportation. So whether the train goes 40 miles an hour or 200 miles an hour, it doesn't matter. It's got to pull over on the side to allow the other train to come back. So what happens with a municipality? Municipal leaders want to get reelected. So they're thinking about things that they can show. Fix the park, put in new playgrounds, fix the highways. It's way beyond that. We need to take care of the infrastructure that other countries have already adapted. And so I'm very happy to do anything I can, because I realize how much the need is here in South Jersey and across the country. Thank you for allowing me to join you today.
Assemblyman Guardian, that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for your contribution and your efforts tonight and hereafter. Very well said. Our next presenter, again, a local government elected official, Assemblywoman Joanne Simon, who is from Brooklyn and has been an advocate for the bank for several years, including most recently the National Convention that was conducted in August in Chicago. And we thank you for joining us tonight. Assemblywoman Simon, you now have the floor. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you. And thank you to my other colleagues in government who have presented from their respective states. I think there are a couple of very common things that we're hearing is affordability, affordable housing, transportation, various systems, infrastructure systems, rail, etc. In our states. This is a really big issue that nobody can really tackle on our own, whether it's a state government or a local government, and the federal government doesn't have the money either. So, I can talk a little bit about New York's needs, and I happen to represent a district that the Brooklyn Bridge comes into my district, the Manhattan Bridge comes into my district. We border the East River and the Atlantic Ocean. And I also have a Superfund site in the Gowanus Canal, which was one of the main industrial provided, I think, 50% of the industrial value in New York for quite a number of years. But we've also learned that you can't fool Mother Nature. And though it was originally a wetland, when they made it into a canal, they created various environmental problems with sustainability, not to mention all the toxicity of the various uses around that area, including the manufacturing of coal tar through the lighting systems when they were burning gas through the gas company. So we have 500,000 lead water lines in New York to repair. We know it's at least $30 billion to fix our bridges. We know that some of our infrastructure in New York City is over 200 years old. One of the problems with that is we're losing water. So just recently we learned that New York City is losing about 35 million gallons of water a day because of leaks, just because of leaks. And that's not, the water we give away to fight fires and things like that. This is just leaks in the system. And that's in one main aqueduct. And there are other aqueducts feeding New York City, and they're leaking as well, but not as bad as the main one. So, the big issues, we can't handle our rain. We have greater rainfall happening. So, we can handle 1.75 inches an hour. We're routinely getting 2 inches an hour with increased rain because we're getting more rain, and we're getting more rain in a compressed time frame. So we have a lot of flooding. I know this is an issue that affects a number of places, not just New York City and not just my district. But if we don't fix our infrastructure, whether it's water, whether it's roads, whether it's our subway system. I have one stop where it's the only stop in the entire system of 427 stations where there's only one staircase in and out. God forbid something happens. To add an exit, it will cost us about $500 million because part of it is holding up the Manhattan Bridge. So in areas where you have really old infrastructure, we've built on top of it. And now we're finding that we need to make some major changes in places that you wouldn't anticipate. So 62 colleagues of mine in the state assembly sent a letter to Congress supporting the infrastructure bank bill. I've been talking to people around the state as well as in my state government about the need to do an infrastructure bank so we can be supportive of this process. It really is so critical that we start getting real. And we know, for example, that the way we've been funding things, and housing is a big issue people have brought up. Housing is a big issue in my area as well. And that is that we've been relying on the private market to build housing where a small portion of it is affordable. And what's affordable isn't necessarily terribly affordable to working people. In fact, it's very often a little bit too much. And so one of the things we're doing is we're building 80%, 75%. That's market rate, which in my area and in most of New York City is pretty high, with a small portion of affordable housing. So it's never going to meet the need. And we have to stop funding our housing that way. We need more access to capital. And the National Infrastructure Bank is a way to build affordable housing in a way that is sustainable, be more affordable, and isn't going to break the bank and rely on private developers only to do that building. So I will leave it at there. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that anybody has. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Simon. We so appreciate your comments and support. We're now going to go to one of the exceptions as far as our presenters are concerned tonight, who is not an elected official, but understands government very well. David Robinson is the director of the External Affairs of Manufacturing Renaissance in Chicago and has a deep expertise as far as infrastructure and financing is concerned. We welcome you here tonight, David, and you now have the floor to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, everyone. I want to say hello to the elected officials that have joined us. It's great to hear your support for this bill. And Jack, I didn't know that I had added financial expertise to my I'm not one, but I play one on TV every now and then. So what I'd like to share with you is from looking at this from a manufacturing lens. I'm the director of external affairs for a small but mighty nonprofit in Chicago, and our mission is to advance sustainable development, sustainable inclusive development that builds community anchored in manufacturing. We have two pillars of our work. One is when we recognize that there are 58,000 current vacancies just in Illinois alone, paying $85,000 a year, and manufacturers cannot find the talent, they can't fill those jobs. So we connect education and training to the manufacturing industry. So we have a pretty robust industry certified manufacturing training program where we take youth and young adults from the community, west and south side to Chicago, which and these young people have, don't even know that manufacturing ever exists because those days left them 35 years ago when all the plants closed. So we bring them in, expose them to it, get them trained up. And we also have partner with social service agencies to get them ready to work. A lot of the young people have no clue what that really looks like. So we help them get the job. The trick is helping them keep the job. The other part of our work is advocacy, which I've done for a lot of years. I had a public affairs company some years ago myself, so I'm accustomed to this. And our organization was involved in the language for the CHIPS Act and Science Act, for the infrastructure bill, for all of the sort of good news that came out of the last administration in terms of supporting industry and infrastructure. But it wasn't enough, as Alfecca noted. And this bill is just really smart. Eric Hobsbawm, Alfecca, I'm sure you probably read some of Hobsbawm's work in terms of recognizing that the golden era of United States in terms of job growth, economic growth came after during the war years, and then a good 25 years after that. And why? Because that bank bill spurred and generated such growth in the community and in the economy that it just kind of spiraled and grew. So so let me paint a picture kind of on the ground from the manufacturing perspective. In Illinois, we have a lot of our manufacturers, and I work with them across the state and throughout the region. They have issues with the quality of the roads. Manufacturers have to have something called on-time delivery. They've got to get stuff fast to market. And because of the clogs in the rail system, because of the problems in terms of the quality of the roads, their over-the-road transportation sometimes is really difficult. And this is true with cargo, with air cargo. Rockford in Illinois is one of the leading cargo airports in the country. They are at capacity, can't do anything more. And which means that air travel is restricted in terms of moving product in the air. So at every level of transportation, delivery, and logistics, there are restrictions. Only the infrastructure bill can fix that. Let's flip it, though, on the positive side. What does this mean for jobs? Alfecca, you probably already know this, but the multiplier effect, which essentially is what happens when a new job is created, manufacturing has by far the most aggressive and effective multiplier effect. Every one new job in manufacturing creates additional 5 to 7 new jobs in the supply chain. No other sectors anywhere even remotely close. So let's apply that to if the bill were to pass. So if the bill passes and these projects start, that means earth movers have to be manufactured. Steel's got to be made. Concrete's got to be laid. These are jobs that will be sustaining for a long time. And these are the kind of jobs where affordable housing becomes less of an issue. It's going to be, where do we put all these new houses that we can build? Because people will have livable, not only livable wage, because we sort of reduce our expectations. These will be the kind of wages that allowed this country to grow in the golden era. So my sense of this, when deindustrialization hit hard with offshoring and all the other kind of market conditions, every community and every urban area and rural area fell to its knees. I lived 4 blocks away from the U.S. South Works in Chicago that employed 20,000 at that time, mostly men, but 20,000 men, and they all had enough money to buy homes. And these are high school educated folks. They're not back in the old days of manufacturing. And the community I lived in was idyllic. As I look back nostalgically, they shuttered the plant when I came back from college. Those jobs disappeared, and in a short 10 years, we heard machine gun fire in the neighborhood. This is a necessity, not just from building bridges and building roads, but rebuilding the character of our country, rebuilding the growth that occurred during the golden years. And you know, there shouldn't be a lot of wrangling about this. It's the answer. Let's do this. So our community of manufacturers and those that support that are fully behind this work. And anytime that Alfecca and Stu and Jack and the team need me, I'm more than willing. I didn't know we could do pictures though. I'll put up, you know, a PowerPoint next time and show you some data. But the point is, and you know, everybody can see what's happening. We need this. And it's time for people to sign on and get this thing passed. And let's rebuild this country and put it back on the right rail, if I may. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, David. And that sounded like a lot of economic expertise to me. Thank you. Next, I'm very happy to introduce to you a Kansas City, Missouri City Council member from Kansas City who assisted with the recent passage of a resolution in front before the Kansas City, Missouri City Council, advocating their support for a national infrastructure bank. I'm very happy and pleased to welcome tonight Melissa Patterson-Hazley. Melissa, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm playing double duty here because I'm in a board meeting, so I'm in the back room. But I just wanted to hop on and express my deep support for this bill, a national infrastructure bank. I personally believe I'm here in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm Councilwoman Melissa Patterson-Hazley in Kansas City. I represent the 3rd District at large. It's one of the more disinvested districts, you know, over many years. However, something like this national bank will be a big help and a big boost, you know, to my area and to my city, because we have a lot of deferred maintenance. The city of Kansas City has had a demolition policy over the last at least 20 years that has adversely impacted certain areas in the urban core. And so we have a lot of soil remediation. We have infrastructure both underground and above ground that needs to be dealt with. We also have a number of bridges, as well as a creek that runs through from Kansas, you know, all the way through the urban core and up to the Blue River. And there's a lot of infrastructure needs, environmental needs along that corridor as well. So this is something that would help us do not only a lot of large infrastructure projects, but it'll also help us put people to work. And I think that's a very important part of this is the ability for folks to have jobs and make a great livelihood, which, you know, the federal government, a lot of those jobs have been known to help families, you know, live a good life, raise families, raise strong families. And that is something that we need all across our towns and cities that we live in. Some of the rural parts of Missouri are also in need of medical facilities, hospitals, and the infrastructure, the very expensive infrastructure that comes along with that. So I appreciate the team reaching out to my office and making sure that that I was aware of it. I've educated myself about it a great deal, and I really hope that this Congress will get on board with it and pass it. So thank you again for the invitation and for allowing me the opportunity. I will stay in the fight with you guys, and please let me know how I can continue to help.
Thank you so much. We so appreciate you joining us tonight, Councilwoman Hazley, and we so appreciate the endorsement by your city council for the bank, and we look forward working with you and Kansas City and the state as far as promoting the bank to develop our infrastructure there. Our next presenter is one that has been a supporter of our efforts for several years now. Senator Tallman is from New Mexico, and he has been an active advocate extraordinaire over these years, both promoting the bank within New Mexico and also nationally as far as the National Association of Elected Officials are concerned. And we're happy that you've joined us tonight, and we would like to provide you with an opportunity to speak in advocacy for the bank. Thank you, Senator Tallman.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I've been asked to speak very briefly. As has been mentioned, I've been working with Stu Rosenblatt on this issue for the last 4 years. And Stu asked me to share with everyone the fact that I was able to get we only have 3 congresspersons in the Congress. And incidentally, New Mexico is the 5th largest state in land area and ranks 36 in population. So there's 14 states that are smaller in population. But I've didn't want anybody to think that I've lived my whole life here. I was a professional city manager before I became a state senator, and I've worked in Connecticut, New York, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. So I was successful in getting two of our congresspersons to become sponsors of the bill, and I helped facilitate the third one. So in the meantime, I've been tasked with trying to set up meetings with our 3 congressional sponsors, meetings with OFECA, so that they can have a better understanding of exactly how the infrastructure banks works from a finance standpoint. So we need more sponsors, especially Republicans. So I would challenge everyone on this Zoom to contact their congresspersons and urge them to become sponsors. And it's not easy. It's hard. You have to be persistent. You have to be persuasive. But this is so important. We are in a crisis. Our infrastructure is in terrible shape. We're falling behind the rest of the world. I've been to Europe twice in the last 2 years, and the high-speed rails, 15,000 miles of them blow you away. And we don't have any high-speed rails in America, and we're just falling behind the rest of the world. If we don't greatly improve our infrastructure, we're going to fall behind the rest of the world. We're not going to become competitive. In order to have a robust economy, we need to vastly improve our infrastructure by spending not billions but trillions of dollars. Biden's infrastructure bill that was signed 3 years ago is just totally inadequate. I flew to Cincinnati recently. I took a road trip into Ohio, Pennsylvania, and upstate New York. And I have to say that the roads in Ohio and New York were really above average. Pennsylvania, not so much. So the gentleman from Michigan is correct that Ohio has above average roads. So I would ask to be very brief. Incidentally, as of Monday, this past Monday, I'm no longer a state senator because I didn't elect to run for re-election. I was the oldest state senator. I'm 84 years old. Although I kind of wish now that I had run for re-election, because for the first time, every state legislature gets a full-time assistant in New Mexico. So we're way behind the rest of the world in the United States, and that we had a very inadequate staff. So again, thanks for me being here. And I would urge everyone to really, I would challenge everyone to call their congresspersons and urge them to sign on to this National Infrastructure Bank, because it's so important. We're falling behind the rest of the world in our infrastructure. And the bad news is we haven't heard one word in the last week from Washington about infrastructure. This is why we have to really redouble our efforts and work harder than ever to get this bill passed. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Senator Tallman, and you hit the nail right on the head at the very end. So appreciate your support and contributions over these years. Next, we're going to have a speaker that we didn't initially schedule, but we are going to provide an opportunity for her to do so tonight. Julie Olson is Alaska's Progressive Caucus Chair, is a business owner, and has been a long-term advocate for the bank, and is a member of the board of directors for the Coalition for a National Infrastructure Bank. Tonight, Julie, we would like for you to make a short presentation regarding your advocacy for the bank, and welcome.
Way to put me on the spot, Jack. Hi, everyone, and good evening. Well, I'm up here in Alaska. It's January and it's raining outside. Normally, this time of year, it would be, 20 degrees. Usually in January, we would get a little spell where it was -10 or -20, but it's raining and it's actually been warm all for the entire month of January. We don't have any snow on the ground. It's raining right now. In Washington State, I know it's 18 degrees. So Washington State and many parts of the country, it's colder than it is here in Alaska. And that's just really an indication of how climate change is affecting our whole country. The experts say that climate change is affecting the Arctic faster, and it's warming faster at a faster rate than it's affecting other areas of the country. So up here we have very, very significant climate concerns. We used to have something called permafrost, where the ground would be frozen all year long and buildings could be built by running pilings into frozen ground. Well, now the ground's not frozen all year round. So those pilings that used to be frozen permanently into the ground are now wobbling and bending and consequently causing damage to hospitals and schools and other public buildings around Alaska. We have entire villages that have to be moved off the coast. So just a lot of really serious climate concerns. I do want to say that we have a new representative that was just elected to Congress. He's managed to get himself on a couple of infrastructure committees, including the Transportation Committee. And so one of our goals here in Alaska this year is to hit up our new Republican congressperson and say, hey, our need for infrastructure here in Alaska. You're in a position now in Congress where you could do something about it. You could make a difference. And so we're going to be trying to get an audience with him to see if we can make a pitch to that new Republican congressperson. And so I would just urge everybody to think about the opportunities that we have here in the new year. Anytime there's change, some doors may close, but other doors will open. And so I think this is just really important for us all to get back out there and regroup and help chart our way forward this year. So that's what we'll be doing here in Alaska, and hope everyone here is ready to keep marching forward and putting in the effort to garner more support for our proposed legislation. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for sharing those very frightening comments and observations with regard to global warming, especially in Alaska. And let me just also add, here in Western Pennsylvania, you provided us with a -10-degree weather earlier this morning. We'll take your rain going forward.
Like I always say, you don't have to shovel rain, right? So
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to go to the question and answer portion of our presentation. But before we do so, we have several resolutions that have recently been passed that we just want to share with you. And the first is from the Maryland General Assembly that was submitted January 8th of this year. And we're very pleased that that's the case, and we will be advocating very strongly for its passage as time passes. We also have another resolution that's been submitted to the New Jersey General Assembly that some of our speakers referred to earlier tonight. And again, we are very hopeful of garnering support from them. We've already in the past have had resolutions supported by both the House and the Senate in New Jersey. Next, we have the Bellingham, Washington City Council passage of the National Infrastructure Bank resolution as of yesterday. As you can see, these are all recent. These examples of resolutions passed by local government exemplify the strength and the validity of what a national infrastructure bank means. We also have resolutions from the New York City Council, which passed a resolution on December 19th, 2024. I believe that's the second time that they did that. Urban areas, there's no more bigger and more prestigious than New York City, understand what this is all about. Kansas City also passed a resolution, as we referred to earlier, on December 19th, 2024. Again, local government understanding and having the deepest appreciation of the needs we face as far as infrastructure development is concerned. What can you do in order to promote this policy and advocate for it to be adopted? Call your congressperson to arrange for a Zoom meeting, which we will participate in. We do that all the time. We will meet with anyone. So any influential opinion leader within your community, elected official or otherwise, labor, business, we want to talk to them and connect us. Call your state representative for a meeting regarding a resolution with the legislature. Call your city council member, and then please donate. We are on the cusp of having a huge impact on policy and development of our economy through advocacy of this policy. We have very important events that are occurring. We're going to the DNC National Reorganization meeting next week, and there are other events that are occurring that will be very important going forward for us to promote the bank. There's flyers that can be distributed. Just make yourself copies by going to our website and pulling them up and printing them. We really appreciate you doing so. And there's the information regarding our website. So next, we're going to go to questions and answers. And I see already we have a couple hands raised. I'm going to start with Randy first and then go to David. Randy, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you. It's been a while since I've seen everybody. I just wanted to comment on something that had occurred to me a couple of months ago. We do not have a Wikipedia page. The only reference to an infrastructure bank is the failed one back in 2008, the failed attempt to create an infrastructure bank. Is there anyone who would like to help me put that together? Thank you, Alphecca. I'll go through the details of signing up for Wikipedia to edit a page, and we'll get it rolling.
Excellent.
That's a wonderful idea, Randy. Thank you so much. Great suggestion.
I literally discovered it in the middle of looking for something about it. I discovered this other page and I'm going, what? We're not there?
Also, we'll ask Ellen if she'll help, because I think she's written Wikipedia pages before, right, Ellen?
Outstanding. Thank
No,
you.
no, I haven't written Wikipedia.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was you that wrote the one on on how banks create money. I thought that was you.
Well, not for long, Ellen.
I've written lots of articles on it.
That's
yeah.
it. Okay.
Fortunately, I have put wikis together before, so
Okay.
not
Great.
that hard.
Great, great. Thank you,
The only
David.
thing I got out of Amazon.
Right. David, you're up next. Go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jack. As I'm thinking about how I can be more helpful, our president of the Cook County Board in the Chicago region is one of the more powerful elected officials in the Midwest, and is considered one of the top 100 most powerful women in America, President Toni Preckwinkle. She was my boss when I was in the Department of Economic Development 35 years ago. So I'm going to approach President Preckwinkle because I think a resolution from the Cook County Board would be probably useful to add to your list of things. But the other point, I'm in contact with a number of the manufacturing and industry associations throughout the state of Illinois. And I want to ask, would that be helpful to begin to get actual industry to start to weigh in on this thing?
David, I think that that's a great suggestion. Yes. And let me just expand upon that and say, we're more than happy to talk to Chamber of Commerce's, both locally and statewide. This makes sense as far as their interests are concerned. And we need to break into that aspect of the economic part of our economy. So yes, that's a great suggestion, David. We need to break into those groups and that community.
Excellent. And then the last thing, I'm co-chair of a group called the Federation for a Manufacturing Renaissance, and we're a national organization that promotes bills like this. And we have a bill, in fact, that Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky is introducing this session. And I think I may have mentioned it at one of the other events, but we will craft a letter of support under the FMR banner and make sure that that's kind of on the list of things that we contribute as well. And it might be good to get a young person that we've trained and is working in manufacturing to say a word or two about this. Sometimes you get that voice of youth where they're actually benefiting from this work, and it can be very effective. So if that's of interest, I'll try to start to arrange some of that too as we go forward.
Another great suggestion, David. The generational approach is something that should not be ignored. So thank you for that suggestion and the one previously. Next, I see Nelson has his hand raised. Nelson, thank you for participating and joining us tonight. I am happy that you have a question and you have the floor to ask it.
Thank you, Jack. My question is for David Robinson. David, would you mind sharing your contact information with me or with us? I would love to get in touch with you, get in touch to help you promote this infrastructure group that you're promoting, because I like to promote that in Central Florida.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Nelson. Yeah, I'm going to put it in the chat right now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, can I use the chat? Is it letting me do that?
No, but if we can't, we'll make arrangements, Nelson. You'll get David's contact information. We promise.
Okay.
So
Thank you, Jack.
Nelson.
thank you for asking.
Thank you, David.
We're happy to entertain any more questions. Jim, I see you are waving your hand. Go ahead, Jim. You have the opportunity to ask your question.
Well, I was inspired by Carol Murphy particularly, and some of the others, that we could get Republicans for this, because the last time I looked, the 42 co-sponsors were all Democrats. Now, I don't know if the 48 are all still all Democrats, but that means nothing's going to happen in Congress for the next at least 2 years. So if anything's going to happen, we've got to get some Republicans on there. 3 years ago, I happened to move down here to Southern Florida and landed right in the district of Byron Donalds, the black guy who's the Trump
advocate.
And I don't mind telling him that. I'll tell him I'm a Democrat and all the way. But he's a very smart man, trained in economics. He knows what's going on. And if he were to get behind this, he could draw all kinds of other people in with him. But I'm wondering what I plan to do is say, look, anybody can check and find out I'm a Democrat, and I'm a Democrat. But this isn't a Democratic and Republican issue. It's just something good for the country. And if you were to get behind this, you've got a good shot of running for president. President Trump can say, I've dwarfed those Biden infrastructure bill, and he's got something to crow about. If nothing else works, he could crow about that. So this is good for the country. Has anybody got any other ideas about how to approach him? I've tried his guys, and I don't hear anything more back, which tells me they probably have checked with their people and say, this is a Democratic bill. You don't have anything to do with this. Or some other reason like that they're just not getting back with me. And he only has about one town hall a year, but he's going to be back in the district, and I'm going to track him down this time and get before him and tell him, use this kind of an approach, unless anybody can think of something and advise me that something would be better. Yeah, good.
I can
Jim,
tell
a
personal-
great Go ahead, Randy.
I can tell you from personal experience, what you have in mind is can be very effective. You catch him in a public event where he's speaking and taking questions, answers, and everything else, and you lay out the 30-second. This is what the bill is going to do. It's not Democrat or Republican. It's sensible people versus nobody. And ask him if he will finally sign on to the bill. That's how I got Adam Smith.
Or look at it, at least look at it. So he gets
Well, once he looks at it, he's going to want to do it. The problem is they won't look at it.
Yeah, and his guy did tell me, well, one of the things we've been most concerned about is infrastructure. They tend to run away. We want more congressional control. I would say, okay, put it in the bill, add it on. Who cares? Let's just get it going. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Can I respond a bit?
Please.
Can
Oh,
I speak?
Andy.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Maybe a couple quick points on to respond to that last question. One is that you need to make a point to them that we've had the four infrastructure bills before have had equally numbers of Democrat and Republican sponsors that got those bills passed, and that Hoover started the last one, not Roosevelt. Roosevelt took it over after when he got elected. But that bill was actually proposed by Hoover that got the last one up and running. The other thing is to make it clear to them that infrastructure has always been a nonpartisan issue. I mean, it was Eisenhower who got the highway system going, which was the last major infrastructure bill we've had. So there are logical arguments that you can make that can be persuasive. On the one question you asked about the congressional control, there I'd urge you not to go, because a key part of the infrastructure bank is that once the Congress creates it, you then have a professional bank. It would be like giving Congress day-to-day control over the Federal Reserve Bank or the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. You don't want to do that, because the part of the essential nature of the bank is that it's independent, has back office of independent experts in project management, engineering, and banking, and you want them to be making that decision with the local governments. You don't want the federal Congress as a political body getting involved in those decisions. That's the kiss of death.
I think you're
I
right.
urge you not to give that up.
That was the only objection he gave me, which
Well,
could be
it's real.
a real sticking point in their side.
Yeah, it is with some of the Congress people that they want to maintain control. And Biden tried to get around that with most of his infrastructure projects actually are in Republican districts. And,
Yeah.
And he hoped to demonstrate that, even with that bill. But the other thing is, even better than you're grabbing him at a meeting, which is a good idea, I'm not knocking it, is if you can find any local politician, city council person, the people that have some public standing, and get them to go to talk to this guy or to write letters to the guy. They always respond more to people who have some sort of title, some sort of stature, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
find a, a well-trained but responsible banker even, or economist locally. But the more stature you have, they don't tend to respond very well to the individual constituents, unfortunately, even though we would hope they would. I'll shut up.
Yeah, and if I could add on to that, there's two other little tricks to appealing to Republicans. One is to find out either with the local legislators or just, reading your newspaper, what infrastructure does your district need that it's not getting? Every single district has infrastructure needs that it's not getting. So this is the way for the bank to fund these projects and, again, press on them that if they want to make sure that it's reaching their district, which is a legitimate concern for anybody, a Republican or a Democrat, all they have to do is look at the bill itself because it demands geographic distribution of projects. It lists the exact projects that'll be covered, which is roads, bridges, the standard things that everybody needs. And then it has a lot of oversight already. So there's lots of government oversight on this financial institution. Once it gets going, it kind of operates on its own, but they have input into making sure that it does report to Congress.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alfecca, and thank you, Jim. And believe me, we will follow up with you, Jim, in assisting your approaching Congressman Donaldson. Very, very astute suggestion.
If he
Next
gets
up,
it, Trump would probably be for it.
yeah.
To follow the biggest dog.
We have one or two more hands up. I see Ingrid Claire has hers, and she will be next, and then
Yeah, just one last little story I want to share, but Jim got me thinking about something.
okay, and David, we'll go back to you. Ingrid, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to emphasize that we don't want the government really involved in the bank. We want them to pass the bill and we want to have the bank. But the whole idea is to keep kind of government, or let's say our
Politics.
lawmakers, out of it. Yeah, out of the politics and out of the anything to do with the bank, because the bank's going to run like a bank, and we're going directly to the municipalities that need the money or need the infrastructure, because I don't think politicians are really able to agree much on anything, and I just feel like they would try to manipulate the funds somehow. So I think that's really important to not promise that we're gonna let you assist us in distributing this money or whatever. It's kind of it is its own thing, and that's all I have to say. I just want to reiterate that.
Thank you, Ingrid, and I think most all of us agree with that. David, your comment.
So I got involved in the advocating for manufacturing because it made sense on a number of levels with respect to rebuilding communities about 8 years ago. And as an old journalist, I wanted to find out everything I could. So the National Association of Manufacturing was having their national conference, and they're like the gorilla in the room of the manufacturing associations, and they're very, very Republican. So I go to the conference, and Ron Paul introduces Mike Pence as the keynote. There's probably 600 folk in the room. We're all around the tables, and the 6 people that look like me were serving lunch. But I worked the room because that's what I do. And to a person, every one of them, when we really got to talking about how to do this, they got excited and were willing to play ball at whatever level was necessary to improve manufacturing infrastructure. So I think this idea of going to the folks that are going to benefit the most in terms of job and business creation will smell like roses to this current new administration, because they're open for business in several ways. But I think when they hear from Ozinga Concrete, when they hear from Caterpillar, ITW, some of these major players that have operations globally, they're going to want to learn a little bit more about how to reshore because this tariff threat is going to create an entire new landscape for manufacturers. So they're going to need something that's going to sweeten the pie for them going forward. And I think this bill does it.
Thank you, David. I can't agree with you more.
Can I add just a comment to that if I may?
Sure, Randy.
Yeah, and that is, you're absolutely right, and it's a point that really needs to be stressed. The reason infrastructure used to be a bipartisan issue was because business community wanted it. It needed the railroads, it needed the roads, it needed the ports, you know, it needed the bridges, and so it was not a partisan issue because the business community was behind it. Part of deindustrializing the U.S., which unfortunately started majorly with Carter, and we won't get into that, but the deindustrialization of the U.S. led to a lack of any motivation. Why build a bridge? You don't have a factory to carry anything over it. You don't have you don't have a steel industry to build the materials for it. When we got into that sort of mindset where we weren't looking to our industrial base, it removed a lot of the motivation for having an infrastructure, a strong infrastructure. Part of reindustrializing the U.S. is you have to reindustrialize, you have to rebuild the infrastructure.
Yeah.
You can't reindustrialize the U.S. without the infrastructure. If there aren't adequate bridges, if there aren't, everything, for example, everything we're talking about with AI and all the rest of it, it won't work unless we have a great deal more electricity. And
right.
That means rebuilding the entire electrical grid that we have, as well as expanding it to all sorts of areas where it doesn't now exist. And so I mean, I think talking to Republicans in terms of reindustrialization of the U.S., having an infrastructure bank has to be a crucial part of it because there is no alternative way to build that infrastructure, which the industry needs or the business community needs.
That's right.
And so that's a bipartisan issue, and that's something we should really work on very strongly.
Andy, that's so well said. Thank you for sharing that and expressing it in that way. I think we're approaching the end of our meeting here tonight, given it's been an hour and a half. I want to end first by saying thank you for joining us tonight and your support presently and in the past as far as advocacy for the bank is concerned. We think this is crucial to the success of our country going forward, and certainly for our communities and our local members, not only family, but otherwise. We need money, and we appreciate every dollar that is donated. We spend it very frugally and very wisely. We will be attending the Democratic National Committee's reorganization meeting next week. We organize, and we're in the effort of rebooting our approach to Republican congressional members. In the past, we've already approached over 100 different congressional offices that are Republican with regard to the bank, and we're rebooting. It costs money in order to accomplish that. Please donate what you can. This is a very critical, important time. Yes, there is opposition to this concept at the moment, but I am of the firm and avid position that as time passes, more and more people will recognize that this is a path going forward, and it will not take long for them to be struck by that impression. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight, our panel members, our participants, and we look forward to working with you in the future, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Great job, Jack.
Thank you, everybody.